Hello everybody, welcome to Magdalene's Wish. This is Natalie. Just playing a few moments of a beautiful song. I don't know if you can hear it. Now We Are Free by Hans Zimmer from the Pirates of the Caribbean, or from Gladiator. Sorry, it's from Gladiator. Anyway, it's a beautiful song. Just listening to that, it's calming. Beautiful music, but I'm here to talk about the Notre Dame fire. And I don't know, this song kind of drew me in, like Gladiator, fighting the rise of the phoenix, rising from the fire, and now we are free. I just think it kind of had a lot of meaning. So anyway, beautiful song. I'll stop it. I love the symbolism of songs, and I find there's always a lot of meaning behind that. But I'm here to talk about the Notre Dame fire and what does it mean spiritually. What does it mean for the collective? From a divine masculine perspective, a divine feminine perspective. What does it mean for Christianity, for religion, for institutions, for energy, for the awakening? For culture, for beliefs, fear, everything. It's a million different ways that we can look at this. I'm actually going to break this down into 2 videos. This one I'm going to talk a little bit on the background, some of the background of it, in the history, because it's incredibly fascinating. And I pulled tarot cards, 8 tarot cards, and then 2 other card messages from Yeshua. He's got some messages for us to share as well, and he may come through and speak to you with messages. And I apologize, I've got a cough drop. I've been going through massive throat chakra clearing and spring allergies and asthma, and using my inhaler. So I know I'm going to try to keep it as quiet as possible, but if I don't use it, I get into coughing spells, and I've had to delay doing this video even though this fire happened a couple days ago. I've had to really delay it for 2 reasons. One, because I've been coughing and my asthma has been flared up and I've had to take some medicine to get it settled. But also I've been in meditation state for 2 days, understanding this, trying to learn it. It has incredibly deep personal meaning for me and my past and who I am, and for the collective and what we're here to do as light workers. And our job and our mission. There's so many layers to it. So I'm going to break it down into 2 videos. This one's going to be more general. My second video is going to be more specific about Mary Magdalene, the connection with it, going deeper into Mary Magdalene template, clearing the Magdalene template, and linking that to my personal story. I've been guided to share my own personal story. And there's a card reading with that too, which is very powerful, as equally powerful as this one. So they're 2 different perspectives. One is more global and general, and not just about the fire, but just kind of the big picture of what's going on with energies. The other one's going to be more about the divine feminine, Mary Magdalene, and then tying in my personal story because it's actually relevant to this, and I've been really guided to share this. So it's going to be part 1, part 2. So I'm going to get started. Just a little bit of background. The Notre Dame was built starting from 1160 to 1260. It's French Gothic. It means Our Lady of Paris. Was built by the Knights of Templar for Mary Magdalene, in fact. It was dedicated to Mother Mary. And it was built on sacred ground. It was built on ley lines. There's a crossing, almost in the form of a cross, of ley lines, of a masculine and feminine ley lines that go through it. So it's very sacred ground. And I know there's a lot of mixed emotions about this, and I know when I first heard of it and saw I don't watch the news, but of course on Facebook there's stuff that comes up, and I have news app on my phone, so you get notifications of breaking news. So I read mainstream and then the spiritual, news side of it and the mainstream news. So I kind of looked at all sides of everything and looked at it from a big perspective. And at first, my reaction was devastation and all this is awful and how sad this, we've lost this gorgeous building and it's so historical and all of that artwork, and we didn't know. Of course, you just see this massive fire and you're thinking in your head it's going to be gone. And so you had that fear reaction, right? Kind of like when you think of 9/11 or any other big destructive, traumatic event. You have that fear response. And there's one thing that we've learned in spirituality is when we have a fear response, that fear is energy. It's low vibrational energy, fear and anger. And that energy feeds into dark energy, negative entities, those who don't want the light to win, okay? It exists. We live currently, not forever, in a duality of light and dark. And when we have big events such as this, especially if you're like drawn into the news and you're watching the coverage. I watched the live coverage for a little while and then I just disconnected. So I didn't want to be in that energy. But if we're not careful, we get pulled into that and we get pulled into this fear. And we lower our vibration and we become food for the lower vibrational energy. They feed off of this dark energy, the fear and anger response, and the sadness. So I knew to disconnect from that energy and just take a step back, and it's like, okay, that's awful, but let me understand this. And I really just went in and had an Epsom salt bath and laid in the tub for a good hour and a half that afternoon and just meditated. And it actually triggered a past life for me. And I'll get into that later, but it actually triggered memories for me personally. So that's why there's a lot of personal stuff to this. But back to the history of it, like when I saw it, of course I was mad at first and upset. And then once I understood, my perspectives totally changed. And that's why I'm here, is to just pan out and look at this huge perspective. But foundation first, right? So where it was built, it was sacred ground, and it was ground where there used to be an ISIS temple. And ISIS, if you're not familiar with ISIS, ISIS, we're talking the goddess Isis. Isis and Osiris were twin flames. They were powerful prior to, say, Mary and Jesus being powerful. Twin flame couple. Osiris and Isis were a very powerful couple. And Isis was worshipped. She was the one that was worshipped for good 2,000 years or more, 2000 BC. And after, Jesus was born, Yeshua was born, of course, the worship of him didn't occur right away. He was killed. Mary Magdalene continued his teachings, and it wasn't for, because at that time Isis was still the one being worshipped, and Isis was more of a pagan, in a good way, energy. And Isis was a healer and used nature and used plants and used, white witchcraft, so to speak, for healing, and had many, many gifts. And so she was worshipped, and paganism was the dominant spiritual practice during this Roman Gothic, Roman time period. And it wasn't until about 300 or so AD that Christianity really, and the Catholic Church really began to pick up to where it was becoming a religion or a practice. So the land, of course, it's always been sacred native land, but it was a sacred spot for an Isis temple. And that, fell into ruins. And then in 1160, the Roman Catholic Knights Templar, they came in, or the Knights Templar came in and they built this. And the Knights Templar, if you're not familiar, they're basically like this secret sect that their sole mission was to protect Mary Magdalene and the Holy Grail, her history, her teachings, her essence, all of the bloodline, and her messages, and anything related to her and Jesus and the truth, not by the Catholic Church, but the real truth, and protecting it. And that was the job of the Knights Templar. So it was built by the Knights Templar for Mary Magdalene, and one of the symbols of Mary Magdalene is the rose. And of course, we know the symbol of the Notre Dame church is that huge rose window, and there's other rose windows in it too, but that huge rose window is like so iconic, and it's so beautiful. And I don't know, I haven't looked at the pictures today to see what the status of that window is. I should have, but anyway, like it's so symbolic. The church was also dedicated to Jupiter, which is interesting. And Jupiter was, just reading from my notes, the god of the sky and thunder, in like Roman Greek mythology, similar to energy to Zeus. What's interesting is, in some other more on the spiritual side of things that I was reading, is that the Isis temple was devoted to Jupiter. Now you want to hear something really interesting is, so I'm going to get into this in the next video, but in detail, but Yeshua is, let me see if he wants me to share this now. No, he doesn't want me to share this now. Never mind. You'll have to watch the second video for that, and the meaning of Jupiter related to Yeshua, because there is a tie. So there's a third tie to Jupiter with this. So yeah, he's saying not now. Wait till the next video. Okay, never mind. Never mind, sorry. So Jupiter, so Isis dedicated it to Jupiter. When she had her temple, the Notre Dame was dedicated to Jupiter. Okay. Now Isis, if you're not familiar, also is from the Oversoul Sananda, and Sananda is the same as Oversoul for Yeshua and Mary Magdalene. Okay. So it's the same energy. Isis, and I carry some Isis energy as well as a little bit of Isis energy, but for the most part, I carry Mary Magdalene's energy. But I do carry Isis template as well. So I have a personal link. But the Isis is affiliated with Mary Magdalene, so it's the same energy line. So there's like the Oversoul of Sananda, and who we know as Jesus was, and the pure incarnate of Mary Magdalene, that was the first split off of Sananda. And coming down the line, Isis came to be, and she developed her own very powerful template, and then she had her own incarnates of her, but that still all falls under the big umbrella or soul family of Sananda, the Oversoul of Sananda. And some people refer to Jesus as Sananda, which is truly his true main identity, is Sananda. But Isis is of that same energy. So it's interesting that we went from worshiping Isis, of a white pagan, healer, and spiritual teacher. She was mostly a healer. From worshiping Isis, with essentially shifting from that energy to the same energy, who identified with Jupiter, to the same energy worshiping Jesus in Christianity. The same energy, and this church still dedicated to Jupiter. And I'm sure there's a lot more to it that I don't even understand yet. And I'm sure astrologists can chime in here. The other interesting thing is we're in Jupiter retrograde. So there's so many connections and synchronicities that I haven't even been able to put it together in my head because it's just so much. But I mean, you can just kind of see and put those puzzle pieces together. It's like there's all these Jupiter connections, and there's another one that's going to be next video. But we went from Isis to Jesus, but the thing was, and similar energy and similar messages and everything. The issue is the Catholic Church, and not just the Catholic Church, but the powers that be that put the Bible together as we know it now, left so much information out of his original teachings and then manipulated his teachings and changed the wording of his stuff. And there was so much information left out of the Bible that what's presented to us is an extremely watered down, modified version and manipulated version. So it's not really accurate. But really, in essence, it's been similar energy that we've been following from transitioning from ISIS to Christianity. So I find that very interesting. And that this church was built on the same energy. I mean, it's fascinating. The church itself, it was under renovation. The gargoyles on the outside were actually removed, and some people were kind of like saying, oh, it's kind of funny because the gargoyles were there to protect, and of course they were taken down because it was under renovation for their, safekeeping. And then this happened, so some people are kind of, saying, oh, because the gargoyles weren't there, that this happened. Who knows, right? But the gargoyles were removed. Jesus's crown of thorns was in there, and some nails from the cross, from the crucifixion, were in there. Apparently those are safe. I don't know if they were taken out beforehand because of the renovation, but they are safe. And a lot of the artifacts were removed ahead of time because of the renovation. So that's kind of a very abbreviated nutshell version of the history of it. And I haven't been there in this lifetime, at least, to visit it. I know people that have, and a lot of the feedback that people, were saying was that they felt a lot of negative energy, a lot of dark energy, a lot of bad vibes, and it was so overly commercialized. Like, you get a ticket, you go in and you tour, like going into any tourist trap museum, and the sacredness of it was just not really there because it's so commercialized, which is really sad and unfortunate. But I guess that's kind of the day and age that we live in. Or is it? Are we shifting? What's happening? And we are shifting, and that's why this all happened. And the fact that this has all happened during Easter week, this is Holy Week. Jesus entered Jerusalem the beginning of this week, and this happened at the beginning of this week, the same time. So, this happened on the 15th, 16th, 15th, 3 days ago, the same day that Jesus entered Jerusalem, and it's that whole Holy Week and all the different steps that he took leading up to the crucifixion. And then this happens the same time frame. So, there's huge connections everywhere. So I'm going to get to the card reading. Let's see if there's anything else in the background of that I wanted to mention. I don't think so. One thing I do want to say, for those that feel really sad at the loss of the building, it's going to be restored. But know that the sacredness is not in the building. It's the ground itself. It's the ley lines and the earth underneath that hold the sacredness. The grounds themselves, when a lot of people that are very sensitive, intuitive, empath people that say that they felt a lot of dark energy, the reason for that is because a lot of bad things happened there. There were a lot of killings that took place, and I don't think we know 100th of the truth yet. I think it's going to come out. I think that's why this has happened. But there were many witches and many people burned at the stake in front of this church, ordered by the Catholic Church. So, I mean, how does that sit well with anybody when a church, through the name of Jesus, orders the death of a person to be burned at the stake and tortured because they're not following the Roman Catholic rules? How does that sit tight with anybody? How? I mean, is that Christianity? Is that what Jesus wanted? No. What did he want? He wanted unconditional love and equality for everybody, and forgiveness and compassion, and to treat everybody the same, to see everybody the same, as equals, without any judgment. That's the basis of Christianity. The Catholic Church has turned it into a business. The Vatican sits on a huge amount of money. And there's a lot of poor people in the world. I'm going to get into that. I'm not going to get ahead of myself. But there was a lot of bad things that happened there. And I had a past life that I uncovered related to the church, with the order that came from the church. I was running and in the countryside through the forest and running for my life, and someone captured me, raped me and beat me, and then I was taken to the site, held, and I remember seeing in my cell, my head was all woozy, because I was like knocked in the head. Looking, there was kind of sort of a crack of a window, and at the window, a very small window, a white dove came right before they dragged me away to be killed. And the white dove represents Mary Magdalene, and I saw a white dove. And then they dragged me off, and I was just like in La La Land. And I was killed. I had my head cut off. And that's part of why I'm going through throat chakra clearing. Because as you clear past lives, when you have any kind of trauma where you're choked, whether you're hung, your head chopped off, or even with Jesus, the crucifixion, the way he was hung, his head fell, and that he essentially choked to death. That's a lot of throat chakra clearing. So there's a lot of throat chakra clearing and coming out of truth and speaking of truth, and throat chakra represents truth. So that's partly why I think I know I'm having trouble with my asthma, because it's throat chakra clearing. It's throat chakra clearing. So I've cleared this past life, and of course that was traumatic personal experience, seeing this and the pain of it and feeling it. But it has to come out. We have to clear these things, and these traumatic events can trigger our own traumatic situations in our own life. And these energies are really powerful right now, where they can trigger things in us, memories to come up. And they have to come up. We can't run from them. We have to clear them. We have to clear the energy. We have to work this energy out, because they're blockages. I can't do my job and be a good healer or a good teacher or a good guide or coach to anybody if I'm not speaking my truth, and I'm not opening up my throat chakra, and I'm not clearing my energy to let more light in and letting the darkness out of past lives. So we have to go through these things as part of the ascension and the awakening process, and clearing out the old energy. And that's what this reading is showing, is clearing out of old energy, and what this fire represents. So we know that when, so the first card that came out, no surprise to anybody, was the Tower card. And it's a beautiful deck. It's a Tower card. of course, and the tower, of course, represents collapse, endings, like a big, dramatic, potentially traumatic event. Also, it represents breaking down of the old so something new can be rebuilt in its place. Letting go of things that no longer serve you. So it's a tower moment. It's a collapse. It's a collapse of a tower. And of course, what part of the church actually was destroyed? Once the fire was gone and you looked at what was left, the surrounding structure was still standing. Okay? The middle, the steeple, or the steeple, or my mind is drawing a blank on the other, the spire. It's crazy, crazy tall and huge. Very phallic symbol, okay? It's a phallic symbol, very tall. That collapsed, and it had a big hole in the middle, okay? And the church was in the shape of a cross, so this was like in the middle. So the phallic structure, and Yeshua was showing me this. This was a message that came through from Yeshua last night in my meditation. It was a phallic structure that collapsed and fell with the fire. And that's this tower collapse, okay? And when you looked at the pictures after, it was this big hole. So it's like if you think of, a woman's anatomy, her body and her vagina, hole. A man's penis, phallus, the steeple, that collapses, but it was being held, okay, in place by the surrounding structure. The feminine structure was holding it. That feminine structure is still there. The phallic is gone. So this is collapse of dysfunctional, dominating, patriarchal energy that needed to go away. This is patriarchal energy that needs to be gone. And the surrounding structure of the feminine is still there. And so we're seeing rise of the divine feminine. So that's the tower card. The next card that came out was Six of Air. Six of Air, and if you see that this is a boat flying in the air, and there's a bunch of white birds, white doves. But this boat is flying above stormy clouds. So it's about rising above, leaving behind storms, leaving behind trauma, drama, pain, chaos, fighting, negative dark energy, and leaving, let's go up. Like, it's like if you've been in an airplane where you're going through a thunderstorm and it's rocky and you're going through the storm and it's dark and it's raining, and then all of a sudden you go above the clouds and it's blue sky and the sun is shining and it's peaceful. So that's what we need to do. Is we need to rise above the smoke. And what we see in the news, and look at this from a bigger perspective. And leave that behind. Leave that energy behind, okay? Leave the, oh my God, this is awful energy behind, because that's negative fear-based energy that feeds into the wrong receptacle. We don't want to be plugged into that fear-based energy. You want to unplug and plug into love-based energy of the 5D energy, and be in a higher perspective, higher vibration, no matter what's going on. And the next card that came through was the Patience card, but this is the Temperance. It's such beautiful artwork in this deck. I love this deck. And it's the Good Tarot by Colette Baron Reed. This is the Temperance card, and of course it's about healing. The Temperance is about healing. The message that came through when I pulled these yesterday was, or the other day, sorry, I pulled these a couple days ago, healing, purification, and transmutation. And if you looked at different video clips or pictures of the fire and the color of the smoke, I mean, there's at one point where it was like rainbow color, like I saw yellow, another picture I saw purple, another picture I saw orange, and it's like, oh, Archangel, Gabriel, Archangel Metatron with the orange, Archangel Zadkiel with the purple, or Saint Germain is there with the violet ray, transmutation. Okay, a lot of different colors coming for there. A lot of white smoke too. It was a lot of white smoke that came from there. But it was very cleansing. Like fire symbolically is a very cleansing meaning. So it's healing. And also with the temperance, it's angels. Okay, so the angels are very present. Spirit was very present. I mean, the place was surrounded by spirit and being guided by spirit, and being held to raise that vibration, and basically supporting that destruction of the representation of that dysfunctional, painful, old programming, patriarchal energy that needs to be gone. So it's not destruction of a building per se, it's destruction for what that energy stood for. Next card that came up that kind of goes along with the Tower card is a Ten of Air, which is Ten of Swords. Air of Swords. And Ten of Air, Ten of Swords is about endings. Ending of a cycle, ending of a karmic cycle. It can be very dramatic, painful endings. This is more of a dramatic, painful endings. It's the completion of a cycle. The energy of 10 is completion of a cycle. So we're in a transition of a completion of a cycle of going from the dark ages as we shift into the golden age of Aquarius. We're not completely there yet. Some say that we've been there since 2012. We're not there yet. We're almost there. And I think this is a big shift into, okay, can we say that we're in the golden age of Aquarius? Almost. We're like almost there. You know, because we've got to get rid of the last of this dark energy. We're so close. And we're shifting to the golden age of Aquarius. And that's what this is. It's like we're saying goodbye to the dark ages. Goodbye to this barbarian time of fighting and fear-based, shame-based institutions, that enough is enough. People aren't going to tolerate that energy anymore. And that church really was symbolizing a lot of that fear-based, shame-based energy. The Catholic Church as a whole, symbolically, not symbolically, it does represent, it has the energy of, and it is run by dysfunctional patriarchal control. And I mean, we know it's no secret all of the scandals of the pedophilia and rapes and sex scandals within the church. And even going deeper, of scandals of underground horrible atrocities of child sacrifice and horrible things that I just kind of avoid in the underground news. I'm just like, oh God, I can't, that might be true, but I'm not ready to read it because it's so incredibly dark and horrific. And these dark and horrific truths are going to come out, and they are not going to be easy for the public to handle. They're not going to be easy, but they need to come out, because it's time that we stop being so associated with any institution, not just the Catholic, any institution, financial, educational, medical, pharmaceutical, our fuel, the way that we, energize everything, our electricity, sources and all of that. Everything, there's so much dysfunction, and the Catholic Church is one big part of that. And it's been on the brink of collapse, the Vatican collapse for a while. And this is the beginning of the end for them. And that's what that 10 of Air is about. It's the beginning of the end. The 7 of Air, or 7 of, is the next card that came out. 7 of Air, another beautiful card. And she's just kind of got all these birds around her, beautiful birds, and she's just not paying attention to them. There's 2 beautiful doves kind of above her, and they are, to me, they represent like truth and Christ energy and Christ consciousness energy, and they're kind of watching her. And all these other birds that are darker, they're not dark, but they're all like trying to get her attention. She's just kind of apathetic, like, no, I'm not paying attention to you. I'm not. She's very disconnected from them in this card, in this energy. And it's, the message that came through was nonconformity. disconnect from the programming of the church, disconnect from programming of mass social or mass media, disconnect from massive industry, period. The programming of it, to like, you have to do these things, you have to follow these rules, you have to be part of this program, or you're not a member of society. Who says? That's fear and shame based. Who says I have to do things a certain way? Who says I have to, I'm not a good person if I'm not a member of a certain church? Who says I can't be Christian and associate myself with Jesus or Yeshua energy and be devoted to him and love his teachings, yet have nothing to do with the church? He wanted nothing to do with the church. So why do people continue to be part of churches when he didn't want anything to do with churches? He didn't want anything to do with money or for donations. He wanted to help. He wanted to heal people. He wanted to teach. That's all he was talking about. He wanted to speak truth, and he got persecuted for it. But so this is asking us to disconnect, take a step back. The other card, Six of Airs, bigger perspective. And here's the next card, the World card, bigger perspective. So the World card is asking us, take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Pan out, like, let's just, instead of being hyper focused. I saw a funny meme that somebody posted today of, there's a meeting of a bunch of fleas on a dog, and you can tell these fleas are on a dog because you see the skin and all these hairs, and it says, who says dogs don't exist? And we can translate that to God. A lot of people say God equals dog, dog equals God, and it's like, who says dogs don't exist? And they're on a dog, they just don't know it because they're on the dog and all they see is this hair, not realizing that is part of the dog. Well, the same thing, right? The meme was just like, it's about perspective. It's not until that little flea comes off the dog and goes way over here, and then they can look and see, oh yeah, that is a dog. It's the same thing. It's like you have to disconnect and go way back, much bigger picture. And you have to detach the emotions in order to do that, the ego. And it's going to be hard for some people because they were raised with the Catholic Church or with church, period. And it's, they turn a blind eye because it's their comfort zone. It's their routine. It's what they do on Wednesdays and Sundays, or whatever their routine is, or their belief system. It's what they do. And I totally respect that and I honor that. At the same time, do we need to have an institution and a leader to tell us what to do or what to believe? No, we don't. And we have to stop burying our head in the sand with this. We have to be honest. We have to recognize it and to bring it out in the open once and for all, and to address these things with the churches, with other institutions, with truth, with manipulations, with lies. But we can't do that until we pan out to a bigger picture, a much broader view. And you have to detach. You can't do that until you detach your emotions. And for some that's going to be really hard to do. And I honor the people that, have that association. And it's got to be so hard. For me, it's not so hard because I'm not associated with any church. I've attended when I was much younger, but it never resonated with me. So anyways, it's just Spirit's asking us to take a much bigger picture, and just to pan out and look at the bigger picture. So the next card that came up was the Temptation card, which is the Devil card. And I want to point out a couple things that Spirit pointed out to me. If you look at the corner, there's a chest of coins and gold. Okay. And the message that came through with that was the money that the Vatican sits on, the gold. I looked it up, even on the NASDAQ website, I looked up It says $64 billion that in assets and gold and money, but hard to calculate because they get gifts. But what they've done is they've taken, this was on the NASDAQ website of all things, they've taken their money, and it's like, and they have a lot of money in terms of real estate and property, artwork, gold, that sort of thing. Granted, a lot of it's been gifts too, and that's valid. But there's a lot of things that have been placed in other church leaders' homes, maybe in plain sight. I'm sure a lot of it's hidden. Excuse me. I'm sure a lot of it's hidden. So nobody knows how much money they have, except that it's a lot. But why is a church sitting, we have to question, why is a church sitting on so much money? And there's so many poor people, even just in France, with that one church alone. Excuse me, take a sip. Even in France alone, how many homeless children and hungry children are there that could be helped? In general, in the world, there's so many hungry children. And how much are they helping? Why do they sit on so much money? So it's just, question things. What are they using the money for? The other thing is, if you notice, the apple has a bite out of it, and there's a fairy that looks asleep. And the message that came through is this fairy represents the general public and the members of the Catholic Church, and it's a poisoned apple, kind of like was it Snow White? It's like, here, my dear, eat this apple, and she eats this apple. It's a beautiful apple, and she takes a bite of it, and she's poisoned. She falls asleep. Sleeping Beauty. And it's like the church has poisoned the public and the members with lies. And if you're asleep, you don't know any different. They're just kind of laying on top of this apple. The church, the apple represents the church. And she's asleep on it, thinking that, oh, this is nourishment, food for my soul. But it's a lot of manipulation. It's a lot of lies. It's a lot of shame-based, fear-based, control-based tactics that they do. And what's interesting is, I was a member of a Unitarian Universalist church, which is any religion, including Christianity, but you can be atheist, agnostic, pagan, Buddhist, and be part of this church. It's a really neat church. And during spring solstice, we had, there's about 20-30% of the members were pagan. And they did a ceremony, and they did a May Day ceremony. And I was astonished the parallels between what they did in their rituals with Catholic rituals. It was so similar. I mean, it was so similar. And I've had friends that I know that are Catholic say the same thing. And one that went to Catholic school and had a teacher even say, like, hey, did you know that this is basically welcome to pagan school? Because a lot of the rituals were pagan based. Because like I said, when the Notre Dame was built, it was ISIS, pagan temple before. So Christianity, or the Catholic Church, carried over essentially pagan rituals. Christmas, I'm not going to get into all that now, but the Christmas tree is pagan. So there's a lot of crossover, more than what, people want to maybe address or accept. And when I talk about pagan, it's not a bad thing. Like, paganism, side note, is basically the respect and worship of Mother Nature, of Gaia, of the earth, of trees. It's why they worship a Christmas tree. Christmas, dancing around a tree. They use essential oils and plant medicine. Shamanism could be pagan. A lot of things I do as a holistic healer using essential oils and crystals, you know, you could call me pagan in a sense. You know, I'm using cards. I mean, but I don't use labels. I call myself Christian. I could call myself Buddhist. I don't identify with any one thing, which is why I don't belong to an institution. But the church doesn't want you to know this. They feed you lies and say, oh no, this is our truth. You have to eat this truth and nothing else. And so it's fear and shame based. But we have to pan out like that world card asked us to really see the bigger perspective. And the final card that came out, well, then I have two more from Yeshua. And this one was interesting. Two of air, which is two of swords. So all the sword energy, which doesn't surprise me, which sword energy is thought, you know, thinking, mental space. Two of air, it's crossroads, decisions, but crossroads. And I'm just going to read a little bit of what came through, of the messages that came through in my note, for this one. And anyway, it says, my notes say, this moment in time is huge, crossroads of change, signifying a choice of free will that people have to open their eyes and perspective, or that people have the choice to open their eyes and have a greater perspective, or to continue to eat from the same poison apple. People have a choice. They need to know the truth. So they see the other road and option before them, and rather than believe there is only one road before them. So people can make informed decisions based on information and evidence rather than tradition and old beliefs. We are shifting into the 5D new earth, and we cannot take outdated beliefs and fear-based programming and trauma with us. New earth is about freedom and love. Money, greed, and fear will no longer be supported and tolerated in new earth, in the new earth energy. And that message came through from Mary Magdalene, actually. So going into new earth, into 5D earth, we cannot take that energy. The money system will eventually go away. It's in the process of transforming now. That's a whole nother topic. But, you know, the money-based system's going to be going away. Greed, doing things with the wrong intent. You know, now we're doing things and doing jobs that are with loving intent, with service to others, for helping others. People are doing more donation-based or energy exchange. You know, I charge a certain fee. If somebody can't afford it, I'll work with them. Do donation-based, you know, if necessary. Have to earn a living at the same time, so it's kind of a hard balance. But, you know, I've done a lot of work for free as well, because I'm guided to, and I know people need help. And balancing making a living. But in New Earth, you know, we can't take this energy, and people need to know that they have an option. They can choose. It's free will. They can choose. The message that came through with Yeshua was this initiation by air. So another air. This is from my Light Worker Oracle deck. Initiation by air. And again, there's all these white birds coming from his chest, coming from his heart. And he's rising up. He's standing on the top of a mountain, and he's kind of open and just releasing. And I'm going to read just a little bit from the book because it is significant. The radiant mind can be a mighty warrior against fear and despair, encouraging you with thoughts of optimism. When not given a chance to empty, however, the mind becomes overwhelmed and with unprocessed information. Much of it will be fear-based programming perpetuated by mass media, which is invested in controlling mass media. Side note, anything mass, any institution, right? Which is invested in controlling others and manipulating them by fear. This initiation, which liberates and opens the mind, empowers advanced souls to free themselves from manipulation and control. The hallmark of dysfunctional society is that the mind is expected to dominate the inclinations of the heart rather than serve it. The mind can be trained to be a great manager, creator, and defender of what has genuine value to the heart. But the power to feel what has meaning for us, what moves us, enough to rise above fears and risk growth, comes from the heart, not the mind. When the mind is given the task to feel, and the heart is told not to feel, paralysis, confusion, and discomfort are experienced. As you enter into this initiation, you will feel the need to step back from what you have been taught and learn to question what you once held to be true. Okay? Question. Step back. This man is standing up on top of mountains. Look at the perspective he has. Look how much landscape is behind him. Okay? I said man, it's an angel actually. As you disengage from habitual mental patterns or habitual practices, engaging with habitually with whatever it is that you're engaged with, it's programming, whether it's a church, the media, TV programming, branding, anything, any kind of programming, it doesn't matter. Disconnect, disengage from habitual mental patterns. You will begin to observe your thoughts rather than be swept up in them. Soon you will be begin to experience yourself as the peaceful, steady light of love that you are in truth. Will the mind go through its motions? Yes. However, there's no need to be afraid of this. One step at a time, your spirit shall guide your mind back towards peace. You will change the way you relate to your own mind, becoming more empowered. And that is what the church doesn't want you, or any institution for that matter. They don't want you being independent. Educational institutions don't want you being independent and empowered. Pharmaceutical industry certainly doesn't want you to know that you could go out and get certain herbal concoctions and essential oils and fix and cure, almost anything without a lot of pharmaceutical stuff. Pharmaceutical medicine, and hello, I'm using an inhaler right now. So yes, it has its time, place, and purpose, and it is necessary when you really need it. But for the most part, there is a natural, holistic approach, plant-based approach to almost everything. Okay? Empowerment. Become empowered with your spiritual practice. Become empowered with everything in your life. You don't need an institution or a church leader to tell you who to worship, how to worship, when to worship, what to read and what to believe, and that this is good and this is bad. Who's to say that? What did Jesus really teach? Right? Excuse me. As you throat chakra clearing, fun stuff. As you soften the strident action of the mind, you will see that you can use your mental gifts wisely rather than allowing them to cause you pain. So I'm not going to finish reading this, but that's the message, is disconnecting, disengaging the mental mind. Go into your heart. What feels right in your heart? What feels true in your heart? What is your truth? You don't need any institution to tell you your truth. Feel it in your heart. But you've got to take a bigger step back and a bird's eye view and see the bigger picture and disengage from the programming, the tradition. It's time, this burning of partial burning of the church is about purification, and that was the last card that came out. Purification by fire. And it says bare essentials, the naked truth, wholeness. And she's naked and she's standing in front of a fire. And we're going up to full moon, which is about clearing away negative energy and forgiveness and letting go of what no longer serves. So the divine masculine, dysfunctional, patriarchal, over-dominating patriarchal energy is collapsing. The world has been too dominant with patriarchal, masculine, dysfunctional masculine energy. That energy, it needs to go, and it is. And the feminine needs to come up, because the masculine has been here and the feminine has been like, hello, we're trying to survive here. It needs to come up. And in the next reading, in the next video, the Justice card did come up. So, wink. But back to forgiveness in the full moon. The last message, when I was meditating last night, connecting with Yeshua, the Lord's Prayer came in. And I'm going to read it to you. He asked me to read it to you because he's asked us to please, where did it go? Oh, sorry. For me to read this, and I knew it by heart when I was young because we said it in school every day, but he's asked us to do forgiveness with the full moon's about forgiveness and releasing of all that no longer serves. You can do the Ho'oponopono prayer as well. So I'm just going to read this and close it out with this. Our Father, and I'm doing the traditional one. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. On earth as it is in heaven. On earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. And forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. So, we can be angry at the church, we can be angry at society, we can be angry at who we think destroyed the church, the Notre Dame, we can be angry at the Vatican, we can be angry about our past lives for people that were killed there. We can be angry at all these institutions, but it's about forgiveness. And Yeshua went into the crucifixion week with a soft, forgiving heart. And he said, I forgive those, for they know not what they do. Okay? They know not what they do. So we do the Ho'oponopono prayer and say, I forgive you, I love you. And forgive. We have to forgive. And we need to do that at this time of, I'm just going to pull up a song that he asked me to play. We forgive at the time of this full moon, going into the resurrection. We have to forgive. So there's a song I want you to look up that he's given to me. It's called Eagle's Wings by Hillsong Worship. And the eagle represents him. And it's just a beautiful song. About him. Really, it's about him. But we have to forgive. We have to let the past go. Let fall. Let what no longer serves us die. So new energy can come in. So divine feminine can come up. And balance. And find healing. It's time to let what no longer serves go away. So I'm just going to let this close out. And thank you so much. Subscribe and like. And then part 2 will be coming soon. Thank you. I will rise on eagle's wings. Eagles, high perspective.